Good morning. This is Omni View, episode 91. It's June 23rd, 2026, and as always, we're covering what happened from every angle. Here's the news, the perspectives, and the questions worth asking. U.S.-hosted talks between Israel and Lebanon open a narrow window for de-escalation that could reshape security costs and reconstruction burdens across the region. Israel and Lebanon are set to begin another round of talks facilitated by the United States in Washington. The discussions follow earlier diplomatic activity involving Iran and the United States. Reports indicate the agenda includes security arrangements and related regional issues. Israeli officials view the talks as an opportunity to lock in security guarantees after years of conflict. Lebanese representatives see them as a route to reduce immediate military pressure and begin addressing infrastructure damage. U.S. diplomats emphasize procedural continuity with past agreements. Iranian statements highlight the need for parallel economic measures to sustain any deal. What concrete security arrangements are actually on the table? Shifting now to a separate development in Canada. A gunman opened fire in Montreal, killing one police officer and one civilian while injuring another officer. Authorities released portions of a manifesto recovered from the scene. The incident remains under active investigation. Canadian law enforcement agencies stress rapid containment and public safety protocols. Local officials focus on support for affected families and officers. Community groups call for renewed attention to mental health screening in high-risk cases. Others highlight the need for tighter manifesto distribution rules after past attacks. What details in the manifesto are confirmed versus still under review? Next, European migration policy draws fresh attention. The European Commission has invited a Taliban delegation to Brussels for discussions on returning failed Afghan asylum seekers. Belgium issued one-day visas despite objections from human rights organizations. The EU does not formally recognize the Taliban administration. European migration authorities argue that practical cooperation is required to manage deportation volumes and border pressures. Human rights groups counter that any engagement risks legitimizing an administration with documented restrictions on women and minorities. Both sides agree the 27-member bloc faces rising returns caseloads. They diverge on whether diplomatic contact can be insulated from broader recognition questions. What legal safeguards are attached to the one-day visas? Meanwhile, consumer protection takes center stage in Britain. The UK Competition and Markets Authority required StubHub to refund more than 50,000 customers and pay a fine of nearly £900,000 for failing to display full ticket prices up front. The practice, known as drip pricing, was ruled illegal. Rival Viagogo remains under separate investigation. The competition watchdog maintains that transparent pricing protects consumers and levels the market for legitimate sellers. Ticket resale platforms argue that dynamic fees reflect operational costs and that abrupt refunds could disrupt event access for buyers. Both positions accept that total price disclosure was not consistently provided at the point of sale. How will refunds be calculated and distributed? Turning to retail expansion, Lidl has retained its position as Britain's fifth largest supermarket with record market share and plans to open 50 additional stores. Aldi continues to close the gap on Asda for third place. The expansion comes amid ongoing price competition among discounters. Discount retailers emphasize efficiency gains that allow lower shelf prices for shoppers. Established chains note that rapid store growth can strain local planning resources and supplier networks. Both sides agree that consumer spending patterns have shifted toward value-focused outlets. Which regions are targeted for the new stores? Now, a follow-up diplomatic development. Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian will travel to Allahabad to discuss security, trade, and other cooperation areas. The visit follows a U.S.-Iran truce that Pakistan helped mediate. It marks the president's first overseas trip since the conflict began. Pakistani officials framed the trip as an opportunity to expand economic ties and stabilize border regions. Iranian statements stress the value of regional partners in implementing the recent agreement. Both sides note that trade volumes have fluctuated with sanctions. They differ on the speed at which new corridors can be activated. Which specific trade or security projects are expected to be discussed? A UN agency and Lebanese research center placed war-related damage in southern Lebanon at approximately $1.38 billion. Lebanese authorities argue that external funding mechanisms must be expanded to cover documented destruction. International donors stress the importance of governance conditions before large disbursements. Both sides recognize the scale of physical damage. They differ on sequencing between security guarantees and financial support. The US-Iran agreement included a proposed reconstruction fund for Iran, but Lebanon's needs were not addressed in that text. Which entities are currently positioned to contribute to reconstruction? Banca Monte dei Paschi di Siena's chief executive said he welcomes outside interest in the bank as evidence of value created during its turnaround. The bank plans to evaluate all options in stakeholders' interests. Bank management highlights improved performance metrics that have attracted bidders. Potential acquirers point to synergies with existing Italian banking operations. Both sides accept that the institution's valuation has risen. They differ on the preferred ownership structure going forward. What timeline has been set for reviewing bids? Prediction market platform Kalshi added India to its list of restricted jurisdictions after the Indian Technology Ministry warned that such platforms are illegal. The move follows earlier attempts to limit access to the service. Platform operators cite compliance with local regulatory warnings to avoid legal exposure. Indian authorities maintain that unregulated prediction markets fall outside permitted financial activities. Both sides agree the service previously accepted Indian users. They differ on whether a complete ban or a licensing regime is the appropriate response. How many Indian users are affected by the restriction? Anne Hathaway, 43 and pregnant, is being tipped for several Oscar nominations following a series of recent roles. She had previously faced intense online criticism in the early 2010s that affected casting decisions. Industry observers note that sustained critical work can overcome earlier public backlash. Some commentators argue that audience tastes have shifted toward performers with longer careers. Both views rest on the record of her recent projects receiving festival and awards attention. Which upcoming films are driving the nomination speculation? Jordan Peterson's daughter shared a message on Father's Day that prompted renewed public questions about his condition. Peterson, 64, later posted his own brief health update. Fans express worry based on the tone of the posts and request more information. Family members have historically limited medical disclosures to protect privacy. Both approaches reflect the tension between public interest in a prominent figure and personal boundaries around health details. What level of detail has been shared in previous updates? To really understand the opening story on the Israel-Lebanon talks, there is a sequencing pattern most coverage leaves out. The United States typically begins by securing private assurances on core security issues before public meetings occur. It then layers economic or reconstruction incentives only after those assurances are documented. This sequencing explains why reconstruction funds for one party can be announced while a neighboring country's damage estimates remain unaddressed. The funds are tied to specific compliance milestones rather than blanket regional aid. Next time you see reporting on a new round of Washington-hosted talks, ask which prior commitments are being verified first, which economic measures are conditioned on those verifications, and which regional actors are explicitly left outside the current package. Before we go, tomorrow watch for further details on how the European Union will structure its one-day visas for the Taliban delegation. That wraps up today's Omni View. Remember, the best informed people read more than one perspective. If this show helps you do that, share it with someone who values fair coverage. See you tomorrow, and before you go, this show is part of the Naira Network, a family of daily podcasts covering tech, science, markets, and more. If you enjoyed today's episode, give Tesla Shorts time a listen. Your daily deep dive into everything Tesla. You can explore the whole lineup at nairanetwork.com. This episode used AI voice synthesis of my voice. Editorial selection and analysis are my own.